Ready, Freddy. The Pumpkin Elf Mystery. By Abby Kline. Illustrated by John McKinley. Chapter 1. A Clue. A clue. A clue. I think I found a clue. Max was yelling and waving something around in the air as I walked into the classroom. What's he saying? I asked my best friend, Robbie. I don't know, Robbie said, shrugging his shoulders. Something about a clue. Let me see. Let me see. Chloe squealed, trying to grab whatever was in Max's hand. Hey, keep your dirty little paws off, Max said, pushing Chloe's hand out of the way. Mrs. Whooshy, Chloe whined, Max won't let me see what's in his hand. That's not fair. It's not his. You're right, said our teacher, Mrs. Whooshy. The pumpkin elf left that clue for the whole class. May I have it, please, Max? Did she just say the pumpkin elf? It sure sounded like it, but I have no idea what she's talking about, said Jessie. Me neither, whispered Robbie. I think Mrs. Whooshy's going crazy. Boys and girls, please come to the rug. I have something very special to share with all of you. Everybody came quickly to sit on the rug. We were all so curious about the piece of paper Mrs. Whooshy was holding in her hand. This pumpkin-shaped piece of paper is a very special clue. I saw it first, Max yelled, jumping up from his spot on the rug. Chloe popped up and stuck her finger in Max's face. That's only because you pulled it off the wall before anybody else could even see it, you big meanie. Did not. Did too. Chloe. Max. Both of you need to sit down and be quiet. I can't read this special message until everyone is ready to listen. I would like you two to sit on opposite sides of the rug. When they were finally seated, Mrs. Whooshy continued. As I was saying, this pumpkin-shaped piece of paper is a clue from the pumpkin elf. Jessie raised her hand. Yes, Jessie. Did you just say the pumpkin elf? Yes, I did, Mrs. Whooshy said, smiling. I've heard of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, but I've never heard of the pumpkin elf. Then you're in for a real treat, said Mrs. Whooshy. Who is the pumpkin elf? Asked Robbie. The pumpkin elf is a little elf with a pumpkin-shaped head who comes around at Halloween time to play tricks and leave treats for kids. Cool, said Max. When do we get to see this guy? He's very hard to see, said Mrs. Whooshy. He's small, and he can run very fast. Have you ever seen him? I asked. One morning when I was unlocking the classroom door, I saw a blur of something orange run between my legs. I am pretty sure it was him. What was he doing? Playing tricks. He had made a big mess in the classroom. What did he do? Asked Robbie. He had thrown the orange crayons all over the floor and pulled all the orange blocks off the shelf. He even left orange footprints all over the place. No way, we all gasped. He's a very sneaky little fellow. What's the clue for? Asked Jessie. Remember that I said he also likes to give treats? He usually leaves us clues so we can find some treats he's left for us. Read the clue. Read the clue. Chloe squealed, clapping her hands. Everyone in the class joined in, chanting, Read the clue. Read the clue. Mrs. Whooshy put her finger to her lips. All of you need to be very quiet if you want me to read the clue, she whispered. The whole room went silent. We stared at Mrs. Whooshy. She cleared her throat. Ahem, the clue says. I am the pumpkin elf, and I'm here to say that tomorrow might be your lucky day. Listen to your teacher and your mom and dad, too, and I just might leave something special for you. Our lucky day, Max repeated. All right. Then he turned to me with his hand in the air. High five, Freddy. I gave Max a high five. Wow. That pumpkin elf must really have some kind of magic powers if he can make Max, the biggest bully in the whole first grade, nice for even a minute. What's the special something he leaves for us? Asked Chloe. I just love surprises. Well, it wouldn't be much of a surprise if I told you, now would it? Said Mrs. Whooshy. Besides, I don't know any more than you. We'll all just have to wait until tomorrow. Ah, the class moaned together. But remember, the clue says you have to be good and listen to your teacher and your mom and dad. If you don't behave, then he won't come. Did you hear that, Max? Chloe yelled across the rug. You'd better not spoil it for the rest of us. Be quiet, you little prissy princess, said Max. You're the one who's going to spoil it. Max, Chloe. You two need to be on your very best behavior, or he won't come back, said Mrs. Whooshy. Great! I whispered to Robbie. He's never going to come with those two around. Don't worry, Freddy. He'll come. How do you know? I just have a good feeling about this. Me too, I said, smiling. I can't wait. Chapter 2. Have you seen the pumpkin elf? Guess who came to our class today? I said excitedly, as we sat down to dinner. Let me guess, said my mom. Mr. Pendergast. The principal? No. Miss Betsy? The music teacher? It's not music day. Why would she come to our class? Sorry. I thought she came on Tuesdays. It wasn't anybody from school. Oh, I know who it is, said my dad, smiling and nodding. You do? Yes, it was Officer Bill, the policeman. I love him, my sister, Susie, added. Ugh, no. I sighed. It was not Mr. Pendergast, or Miss Betsy, or Officer Bill. Do you give up? Yes, we give up, said my mom. Tell us. The pumpkin elf. The who? The pumpkin elf. No way, said Susie. You are so lucky. Would one of you mind telling me and your mother who the pumpkin elf is? Don't you remember? Said Susie. When I was in Mrs. Whooshy's class, the pumpkin elf came and played tricks and left us treats. Oh yes, said my mom. I remember now. Mrs. Whooshy said that he looks like a little elf with a pumpkin-shaped head. Have you ever seen him, Mom? No, I haven't, sweetie. That's probably because he is so fast, said Susie. He doesn't want to get caught. That's what Mrs. Whooshy said. She said she thought she saw him once, but he's so fast that she didn't really get a good look at him. Did he leave you any clues? Asked Susie. Yeah, he left one that said he might come back tomorrow with some treats. Might, said my mom. He only comes if you are good. The clue said that we had to listen to our teacher and our mom and dad. Is that so? Said my dad, chuckling. When I was in Mrs. Whooshy's class, he left us a whole bunch of clues that we had to follow. He took us on a hunt all over the school. I'm so excited I can hardly wait, I said, bouncing in my seat. Freddy, calm down, said my mom. You're going to spill your macaroni all over the floor. Sorry, Mom. How about if you do a little more eating and a little less talking? You haven't even touched your food. Did you ever see him, Susie? I asked, shoveling macaroni into my mouth. Freddy, it's not polite to talk with your mouth full, said my mom. I nodded, smiled, gave her the thumbs up, and swallowed what was in my mouth. I saw something small and orange run past me on the playground, but I couldn't catch him, said Susie. I shoved more macaroni into my mouth. I really want to catch him. Freddy, what did your mother say about talking with your mouth full? Aren't you supposed to be listening to your parents if you want the pumpkin elf to come? I looked at my dad and gulped. Right-o. Sorry, Dad. I won't do it again. Wear your orange t-shirt to school tomorrow, said Susie. The pumpkin elf's favorite color is orange. Really? What else does he like? He likes to give out pumpkins and treats around Halloween. Cool. Freddy, if you're done eating, then it's time to take a bath. Aw, Mom. Do I have to? Remember, the pumpkin elf is watching. You wouldn't want to disappoint him. Oh yeah, right. I'm on my way to the bathroom now, I said as I jumped up and started running out of the kitchen. Don't forget to wash behind your ears, my mom called after me. I won't, I called back. As I started to climb the stairs, I thought I saw a flash of orange at the top of the staircase. Could it be? I ran to the top of the stairs, but nothing was there. Chapter 3. Tricks or Treats. The next morning, as soon as I got off the bus, I ran to my classroom. I couldn't wait to see if the pumpkin elf had come overnight. The classroom door was locked, but all of the kids were looking in the window and jumping up and down, yelling. He came! He came! I tried to squeeze my way in to get a good look, but Max shoved me back with a hard elbow to the stomach. Hey! I'm standing here. Go find your own spot. I was so excited about the pumpkin elf that not even Max could ruin my day. I held my stomach and pushed through a bunch of kids one more time. Finally, I got right up against the window. Then a familiar voice whispered in my ear, "Can you believe what he did?" I would know that voice anywhere. It was Jessie. I turned to her. What? What did the pumpkin elf do? I just got here, and I didn't get to see anything yet. He made a mess of the classroom. Just like Mrs. Wishy said. He threw the orange crayons all over the place, cut up pieces of orange paper and left scraps everywhere, and the orange blocks are all over the floor. I peered into the window. I was shocked. No way. What a mess. How did he get into the room if it was locked? Just then Mrs. Wishy walked up. Hello, everybody. What's all the commotion about? The pumpkin elf. The pumpkin elf was here, we all yelled. What are you talking about? The pumpkin elf came, said Max. He did, said Mrs. Wishy. But the door was locked while I was up at the office. I wonder how he got in. Hey, I was wondering that, too, Mrs. Wishy, I said. Maybe he can change his molecular structure so he can fit into unusually small spaces, said Robbie. Robbie is my best friend, and he is a science genius. He knows everything about everything. Whatever, Brainiac, said Max. I think he has magic powers, said Chloe. Just like fairies. I bet he can make himself invisible and float through walls. Maybe he comes down the chimney like Santa Claus, said Max. The chimney? I whispered to Robbie. The chimney? You're crazy, said Jessie. There aren't any chimneys at school. Leave it to Jessie to have the guts to tell Max what I was only thinking. Mrs. Whooshy unlocked the door, and we all stumbled over one another, trying to be the first one in the room. We ran around, looking at the huge mess that tricky little elf had made. We knew he did it because there were little orange footprints all over the place. I know the pumpkin elf was here because of these little orange footprints, said Max. I think he should be a detective when he grows up, Robbie whispered to me. Yeah. He's a genius. I don't know how he figured that out. We both burst out laughing. Just look at this mess, said Mrs. Whooshy. That pumpkin elf is so naughty. Who's going to clean it up? Chloe asked, wrinkling her nose. Who did she think? The maid? You. You're going to clean it up, Fancy Pants, said Max. Me? But that's not fair. I just got my nails painted orange yesterday for this special occasion. I don't want to chip one. You're not going to do it by yourself, Chloe. Everyone is going to help, said Mrs. Whooshy. She turned to the class. Okay, everybody. Let's start getting this mess picked up. We zoomed all over the room, picking up crayons, blocks, and little scraps of paper. Do you think he's watching us right now? I asked Jessie. Oh yeah. I think he's watching all right, and I think he's laughing at all of us. He thinks it's funny that we are picking up his mess. I quickly glanced around the room, but I didn't see him anywhere. As soon as everything is put away, please come to the rug, said Mrs. Whooshy. I want to get started on our morning work. Morning work? Groaned Max. What happened to the treats? What treats? You said that. The pumpkin elf plays tricks and leaves us treats, said Chloe, with her hands on her hips. We saw the tricks. Where are the treats? Do I look like a pumpkin elf? Said Mrs. Whooshy. I don't know anything about treats. But you said, Max complained. I said that he plays tricks and sometimes leaves treats. I think his clue yesterday said that he might leave treats but only if you were good listeners. Aw, moaned Max. Max, stop complaining, or we might not get any treats, said Jessie. Jessie's right, said Mrs. Whooshy. If I were you, Max, I would be on my best behavior. Oh, fine, Max sighed, crossing his arms. But he'd better come soon. Boys and girls, today we are going to learn about telling time. I know what time it is. Max interrupted. It's time for the pumpkin elf to leave us those treats. Max, said Mrs. Whooshy, one more word out of you, and you're going straight to Mr. Pendergast's office. If I have to send you there, then you might miss the treats. This is your last chance. Do you understand? Max nodded his head and pretended to zip his lips closed. Nobody, not even Max, wanted to miss the treats, that is, if there were any treats. I was starting to wonder. It was then that I saw it, a little piece of orange paper sticking out from behind the October sign on the calendar. Chapter 4. The Hunt. Excuse me, Mrs. Whooshy, but what is that? What is what, Freddy? That little piece of orange paper sticking out from behind the October sign, I said, pointing to the calendar. I don't know. Let me see. Mrs. Whooshy pulled out the piece of orange paper shaped like a pumpkin, and we all started chanting, "It's a clue! It's a clue!" Well, you all are right. It does look like another clue from the pumpkin elf. Read it! Read it, we all yelled. If everyone will be quiet, I'll tell you what it says. A hush fell over the room. It says, "If you want to find my treats, then you must be quick on your feet. Follow my clues, one by one, and you just might find a surprise before the day is done." We all jumped to our feet and started clapping. "Let's go! Let's go!" Hold on a minute, boys and girls. This elf is a tricky little fellow. How do we know he's not just trying to fool us? "He wouldn't do that," said Chloe. "Let's go! Let's go!" we all chanted again. "Well, okay," said